I'm at the construction site in Portland, Oregon, checking steel column blueprints under the dim light of a hanging bulb. A light drizzle falls, soaking the edges of the paper, mingling with the roar of the excavator and the distant calls of workers. My phone in my coat pocket buzzes for the 5th time in a row. I glance at the screen. All calls from Edward and Margaret, my in-laws, calling from Salem. My heart sinks, thinking something urgent must have happened. I step out of the trailer, dodging a muddy puddle, find a quiet corner near the steel fence, and press the answer button. Michael, are you mocking us? Edward's voice explodes through the phone, furious, as if I've just committed some heinous crime. $50? 50? What do you call that? An insult? I blink, my mind blank. What do you mean? I've been sending $4,000 every month, on time. Edward doesn't listen. You call yourself our son-in-law, and send $50? Have you lost your mind? Laura, my wife, cuts in right after, her voice sharp and bitter. You're really selfish, Michael. Living alone in Portland, spending money on yourself, while my parents struggle. Nathan sends $4,000 a month. $4,000. Why can't you be like him for once? I feel suffocated, stepping back, my hand gripping the icy steel fence to steady myself. The rain seeps through my collar, but I feel nothing but a sharp pain in my chest. That's not true. I've been sending $4,000 a month, from my account. Check it. Don't lie. Edward snaps. Nathan told us everything. He's the one sending money, sacrificing for the family. And you just sit around, letting your wife's brother handle everything. You're always like this, Michael, always letting us down.
Before diving into the story, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the latest video.
The line goes dead. The beep sounds like a slap. I stand there, phone still pressed to my ear, not realizing my hand is shaking. I've worked weekends at the warehouse, skipped dinners, skipped life, just to send money to my wife's family. I did it not because they demanded it, but because I thought it was the way to be seen. I thought, maybe this time, I'd be recognized. But now, they think I sent $50. $50. I let out a laugh, a dry, hollow sound that dies before it leaves my lips. I walk back to the trailer, my eyes blurred, ears ringing with anger and pain. I look at the blueprint on the table, but all I see is the number $4,000 dancing meaninglessly. My monthly salary, as a construction engineer, barely reaches $3,000. I had to work night shifts at the warehouse, cut every expense, no morning coffee, no new clothes, just instant noodles and water, to scrape together $4,000 to send. And now they scorn it. They scorn me. I'm Michael Hayes, 45 years old, a construction engineer at a mid-sized company in Portland. I live in a small house in the suburbs. Nothing special, just enough to keep out the rain and sun. Every Saturday morning, I wake up at 5 to catch the bus to the warehouse, working in a cold space that smells of damp wood and machine oil. But no matter how hard I try, I'm never the husband or son-in-law my wife's family wants. Laura always talks about Nathan, her brother, like he's a shining example. Tall, handsome, silver-tongued, Nathan has been praised by the family since he was a kid. They call him a hero, though I know he only scrapes by on odd advertising gigs, never stable. I just sit in the trailer, watching the rain fall through the foggy window, asking myself one question, over and over, what am I to them? A husband, a son-in-law, or just a spare part always in the shadow of Nathan's glow? I tuck the blueprint into my bag, step outside, letting the rain wash everything away. But the pain in my chest lingers, like a wound that never heals. I wonder, what did I do to deserve being treated like this? My monthly salary is barely $3,000. To send $4,000, I had to work extra, cut everything. I didn't buy new clothes, didn't go to the movies, didn't dare order a beer with colleagues. My dinners were usually instant noodles or dry bread, eaten quickly in the kitchen before heading to the warehouse. Some nights, I got home at 2 in the morning, peeled off my sweat-soaked uniform, and collapsed onto the bed without showering. I told myself, just one more month, Laura will see. Edward and Margaret will understand. But they didn't see. They never saw. I remember trying to tell Laura about work, about the freezing nights at the warehouse, but she'd just nod absently, then talk about Nathan. He just signed a new ad contract, she'd say. Her eyes lighting up. He works so hard, Michael. Why don't you try being like him? I stayed silent, swallowing the pain. I didn't want to argue, didn't want to upset Laura, but every word she said, every comparison, was another stab at my self-respect. Sitting in the dark kitchen, the flickering neon light shining on the $4,000 transaction receipt, I feel like the whole world is mocking me. Laura's words, "Why can't you be like Nathan, just once," echo in my head, like a cut that keeps bleeding. I take a sip of ice-cold water, but it doesn't ease the pain. I wonder, when did I become the spare part in this family? When did I learn to accept being overlooked, pushed aside? The answer takes me back to the past, years I tried to forget, but they cling to me like Portland's rain soaking my coat. I grew up in an ordinary family, not poor but never wealthy. When I met Laura in Portland, 15 years ago, I thought I'd found light. She was radiant, her smile melting away all my fatigue, and I believed we'd build a life together. But after we married, I quickly realized that being Laura's husband meant stepping into her family's world, where Edward and Margaret were the center, and Nathan, her brother, was the shining star. From the start, I learned that being Laura's husband didn't mean being loved or respected. My earliest memories aren't of warm evenings with Laura, but of standing silently in Edward and Margaret's living room in Salem, watching them dote on Nathan like he was made of gold. "He's got that spark," Margaret would say, brushing Nathan's hair like it was fine silk. This face was born for greatness. Strangers at the grocery store would stop, gushing, "What a great kid, he should be a model." Then they'd glance at me, say nothing, just a fleeting look as if I were air. At first I told myself it didn't matter. I didn't marry Laura to compete for attention. But when you're 30 wearing a worn-out college coat while Nathan struts in a new suit from a fancy store, you start to feel the difference. When I suggested taking a project management certification, Edward frowned. "Where's the money for that, Michael? Focus on work." But when Nathan wanted to invest in a startup, the check was written that same day. Nathan didn't even bother finishing the project. When Laura wanted a beach vacation, Edward and Margaret said, "Good idea, but take Nathan along. He needs to unwind." So I stayed behind, working overtime to pay the bills, while they laughed on the shore. No one asked if I was okay. They just assumed I'd understand, because I always did. I learned to stay silent, swallowing every grievance, thinking it was the way to keep Laura happy. The only person who ever made me feel I was worth something was George, a friend of my father's, who I saw as a dad. He'd hold my hand during rainy afternoons, in a Portland park, telling stories of resilient men, quiet victories. He named me Michael, because you'll be strong like a mountain, but gentle like rain. He passed away when I was 30, leaving a small savings and a saying I never forgot. "Michael, you don't need to prove anything to anyone. Just be you." I didn't complain about wearing an old coat. I didn't object when Nathan borrowed my car and scratched the paint without apologizing. I didn't speak up when Laura said, "You can't borrow Nathan's stuff, but he can use yours. You don't mind." When I tried talking to Edward and Margaret, they'd just shake their heads. "Michael, let it go. You're the older one. Be mature." Even when Nathan ruined a blueprint I'd prepared for a major project, they defended him. "He didn't mean it," Laura said. "Don't make a big deal." No one apologized to me. I used to think things would change. That one day, Laura would look at me and say, "Michael, I see you. I'm proud of you." But that day never came. Instead, Nathan got funded to try a new business venture, while I had to give up my dream of further studies to focus on work. "We don't have enough money," Edward said. "Think about Nathan's future too." Memories of a phone call from a few years ago surged back, like a puzzle piece explaining why things turned out this way. It was a rainy evening, and I had just come home from work, sitting in the kitchen with a bowl of cold instant noodles. The phone rang, and Laura's voice came through, different from usual, not cold, but almost sincere. "Michael, I've been thinking a lot," she said. "My parents sacrificed their whole lives for us. I want to give back to them." I stayed silent, listening. Laura continued, her voice full of excitement. "We should send money, Michael. A thank you gift. $4,000 a month, from both of us. I know Nathan will cover most of it, since he earns more than you, but I want us to do it together, like a joint gift. $4,000. That amount was more than my rent and groceries combined. I hesitated. Laura, that's a lot. I'm not sure, she laughed. A rare gentle sound. Nathan does advertising. You know that. He makes good money from big contracts. I just want us to chip in a little, to make my parents happy. Oh, and let's send it under a fun name like Rain, to surprise them. I didn't understand why it had to be a secret, but Laura's voice, full of hope and warmth, made me want to believe her. I thought, maybe this was a chance to get closer to Laura, to make her family see me differently. So every month, without fail, I sent $4,000, clearly marked with the name Michael Hayes on the transaction. The rest I believed Nathan sent. As Laura had said, that was our agreement. I trusted her, trusted Nathan, trusted that this was a shared gift, that Laura's family would appreciate me. But now, after the call from Edward, I started to doubt. If I sent $4,000, and Nathan sent the majority, then why did they think I only sent $50? Why did they praise Nathan and scorn me? I stood up, set the can of water down on the table, the neon light shining on the receipt, as if mocking me. I did it all for Laura, because I thought she'd see me, not as a loser, but as a reliable husband. But now, I only saw myself as foolish. I had believed in an agreement, a promise, that was probably a lie from the start. The next morning, I called Stephen, my friend from college, now an auditor in Portland. He's always sharp, his voice like a blade, never beating around the bush. I arranged to meet Stephen at a small coffee shop near downtown, where the smell of roasted coffee blended with the sound of rain hitting the windows. I told him everything about the call from Edward, Laura's accusations, the name Rain, and the $4,000 amount. Stephen sat across from me, frowning, spinning his coffee cup. Michael, you're too kind, he said, his voice low and firm. That's your problem. You let them walk all over you without fighting back. I blinked. Stephen continued, his voice sharp. Let me ask you something. Is Laura's family really struggling, or are they just used to guilting you into giving them money? I went quiet. They said they had debts from raising Laura and Nathan, I replied. Stephen scoffed. Raising you? What debts? Nathan got to go to college, got new clothes, got funded for startups. And you? What did you get from them? Besides contempt. Stephen's question hit like a punch. I didn't answer. He leaned closer, his voice lower. Do you even know what Nathan does with his money? Or if he even makes any? My stomach felt ice cold. Stephen promised to dig around, and that evening, he called back. His voice was flat, emotionless. I asked around. Nathan doesn't have big contracts, just a few small ad gigs, enough to get by. He even bragged to friends that my brother-in-law covers everything, so I don't need to do much. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. Stephen went on, and Edward, he's not working full shifts anymore, just hanging out at a casino outside Salem. Margaret's been showing off a new designer purse on social media. They're not struggling, Michael. They're using your money to live large. Everything in me burned. I had gone hungry, worked in a freezing warehouse, sacrificed sleep, weekends, and peace, only for them to use my money to gamble, buy luxuries, and praise Nathan. I gripped the phone, feeling like the world was collapsing. That night, I checked the transactions again. $4,000 a month, from my account, clearly marked Michael Hayes. But the name Rain, the one Laura called fun, appeared on Edward and Margaret's account, with the full $4,000. It hit me. Nathan had taken the credit, lying that he sent it all, while my contribution was seen as $50, like an insult. Laura knew, but she chose to believe Nathan, her family, over me. I called Laura, my voice calm but cold. Laura, I sent $4,000 a month, from my account, check it. She cut me off, her voice bitter. Don't lie, Michael. Nathan's smart, successful, he sends money with pride. And you're just pretending to be a good guy. Edward chimed in dismissively. We don't need your mockery. Keep your $50. Then they hung up. I had sacrificed too much, only to get lies in return. I opened the money transfer app, looked at the transaction history, and hit the button to cancel the $4,000 monthly transfer. Swore to myself, I wouldn't send another dime, not unless they understood the value of what I'd given up. I blocked Laura and her family's numbers on my phone, deleted every message, every accusation. Silence for the first time, became my strength. I moved out of the house I shared with Laura, settling into a small apartment in Beaverton, Oregon. The place wasn't anything special, a cramped living room, a kitchen corner with a creaky old microwave, and a window overlooking a rainy street. But it was mine, the first time I had a place to breathe. I no longer had to hear Laura praise Nathan, see Edward's contemptuous looks, or endure Margaret's sarcastic tone. I kept working at the construction site, but stopped taking warehouse night shifts. I needed time to live, not just survive. 2 months passed, and I didn't respond to any calls or messages from Laura's family. Laura's voicemails, full of accusations. "What are you doing, Michael? Why are you so selfish?" were deleted immediately. I didn't want to hear more lies. But one morning, as I was brewing coffee in my apartment, the doorbell rang. I opened the door, and there stood Laura, Edward and Margaret, soaked from the rain, their clothes dripping. Nathan stood behind them, lips pressed tight, eyes fixed on the ground. "Michael, we finally found you," Margaret said, her voice like this was a reunion, not a confrontation. "We've been trying to reach you forever." Edward jumped in, his voice hoarse. "We need your help, just a small loan, to get through this rough patch." Laura looked at me, her eyes glistening. "Please, Michael, I was wrong. I thought I could handle it, but everything fell apart." I looked at Nathan, waiting for him to say something. He muttered, I made a mistake. I thought that project was real." I frowned. "What project?" Then it all poured out. Nathan said he'd been contacted by an investment firm in Seattle, promising a big business opportunity, a real estate project with high returns. They required an initial investment fee. Nathan convinced Edward to pull his retirement fund, Margaret to take out a bank loan, and Laura to chip in her savings. They sent the money, but the firm vanished. No contract, no contact. It was a scam. They lost everything. The house in Salem was sold to cover the debts, and now they lived in a rundown apartment complex on the outskirts. Edward took odd jobs, Margaret cleaned offices, and Nathan bounced between bar gigs, but his arrogance made it impossible to keep any job for long. They came to me as a last resort. "Your family, Michael," Laura said, her voice trembling. "We don't have anyone else." I looked at them, like they were strangers. "You threw away my trust," I said, my voice calm but cold. "You chose Nathan's lies over my truth, and now you want my help." Margaret's eyes welled up. Edward clenched his jaw. Laura whispered, "Please, Michael, we have nothing left." I stared at them for a long time, unblinking. "Before you come to me, go to the police station, see a therapist, or look in the mirror." Then I shut the door, for the second time in my life, right in their faces. They knocked again, harder, more desperate. I didn't open it. I stood behind the curtain, watching them fumble on the porch, under the rain. Edward glanced at his watch. Margaret whispered something in Laura's ear. Nathan just hung his head, like a child realizing the game was over. Finally they left, but not before slipping an envelope under the door. Inside was a piece of paper, scrawled with a few lines. "Dear Michael, we're sorry. We'll use George's savings if you refuse to help. This is your last chance." My blood ran cold. That money wasn't theirs. George left it to me, in a trust fund, when he passed away. He saw something in me, something Laura, Edward and Margaret never did. I didn't hesitate. The next morning, I went to the bank, transferred the entire sum into a secure investment account, locked tight with legal protections. I changed my phone number, told my landlord not to forward mail from strangers. I deleted every old message, every voicemail, and then I breathed. 3 years have passed since the day I shut the door on Laura, Edward, Margaret, and Nathan. 3 years since I moved to a small apartment in Beaverton, locked George's savings in a safe account, and cut off all contact with my wife's family. Silence, once a source of pain, has become peace. I no longer hear Laura's accusing voice, see Edward's contemptuous looks, or face Nathan's lies. I chose myself, and for the first time in my life, I feel like I'm living, not just surviving. I'm still a construction engineer, but now a project manager at a larger company in Portland. Work is no longer a burden, but a source of pride. I got promoted after passing the project management certification, something I'd delayed because of those warehouse night shifts. I moved from the Beaverton apartment to a small house near the Willamette River, with polished wood floors and a tiny balcony overlooking the shimmering water. There I grow green plants, inspired by George, who once said trees teach us patience and strength. Every morning, I water them, watch them grow, and feel myself growing in my own way. I started running, joining a group in a nearby park. The sound of shoes hitting the trail, my breath mingling with Portland's cool air, makes me feel lighter. I've learned to cook, trying to make bread from whole wheat flour, though it sometimes burns. I laugh more, not to please anyone, but because I want to. Stephen, my best friend, drops by often, bringing coffee and stories about his auditing work. He's the only one who understood me during those days of struggling with my wife's family. "You've come a long way, Michael," he said, during one meetup at our usual coffee shop. "I hope you see that." I nodded, feeling for the first time that I truly deserved the compliment. One afternoon, at a company event in downtown Portland, I met Sophie, a new architect at the firm. She's tall, with brown hair tied neatly, and a gentle but vibrant smile. Stephen introduced us, grinning mischievously. "Michael, this is Sophie. She likes books and plants, like you." Sophie smiled, her eyes lighting up. "I heard you grow plants on your balcony. What kind?" I opened my phone, seeing a text from Stephen. "Sophie thinks you're interesting. Don't let her get away." I smiled, a real smile, not forced. I replied, "I got it." As the company party shifted to a slower melody, Stephen pulled me to the corner where Sophie stood, a glass of wine in her hand. "Michael, come here," he said, his smile sly. "Sophie wants to hear more about your garden." Sophie laughed, her brown hair catching the light. "I'm serious," she said. "How do your cacti survive Portland's rainy season?" I laughed, a relaxed laugh I didn't often have before. "They're tough. Just a bit of light, and they keep going, no matter how much it pours." Sophie nodded, her eyes bright. "Like people, right? Resilient, even if no one notices." We talked about books, about the trails around the Willamette River, about how Portland teaches you to wear silence like armor. Sophie shared stories of her childhood in a small town, where she learned to love nature and find peace in simple things. I didn't mention Laura, or her family. It wasn't necessary. Sophie seemed to understand, not asking questions she shouldn't. As the music shifted to a slow jazz tune, she said, "Sometimes letting go of people who don't value you is the only way to find your real family." I looked at her, and for a moment the world stood still. I walked towards Sophie, coffee in hand, and started a new conversation. As the party lights dimmed, I knew this was the real beginning, not just of a relationship, but of a life I'm proud to call my own. Michael Hayes' story reflects the pressures and conflicts common in modern American life, especially regarding family responsibilities, self-worth, and the journey to rediscover oneself. In today's U.S. society, where individualism is celebrated, but financial pressures and family expectations still weigh heavily, Michael's story offers a profound lesson about setting boundaries and prioritizing personal value. Michael sacrificed so much, working at the construction site and warehouse in Portland, cutting expenses, sending $4,000 a month, only to face contempt from Laura and her family, who idolized Nathan despite his lies. This mirrors a reality in America, where many, especially those in their 40s and 50s like Michael, feel trapped in the role of provider, sacrificing personal happiness to meet family or societal expectations. Michael's discovery of Nathan's deception, his confrontation with his wife's family, and his eventual choice to separate, move to Beaverton, and rebuild his life with a new job. Hobbies like running and gardening, and a potential relationship with Sophie, show the power of letting go of toxic relationships. The takeaway is, in modern American life, where financial pressures, like Portland's high cost of living, and societal expectations, like the role of husband/son-in-law, can make you lose yourself, have the courage to set boundaries, protect your personal value, and invest in what truly brings joy. Like Michael did with his garden, and runs along the Willamette River, don't let blind loyalty to family or society rob you of the chance to live a fulfilling life. If you connect with Michael's journey of rediscovering himself, subscribe to the channel to catch more meaningful stories. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.